In this video, we will remove the needle bar and the entire thread take-up system from this late model Singer 99. Let's get started. Before we can take the needle bar out of the machine, we need to remove the needle clamp. And it's very simple to do. This is what we use whenever we want to insert a new needle into the machine. We tighten the clamp down, and that's how the needle stays up inside. To remove it, you just loosen it almost all the way. In fact, you can even take this little clamp and turn it till it comes out. But what you'll notice is once you have it pretty much all the way out, it will just slide right off the end. This is the needle clamp. And for the purposes of cleaning, let's go ahead and take it all the way apart. I have oiled this machine up a lot, so hopefully all the parts come off easy. I hope you're going to do the same thing, but this probably could use a good cleaning. So we'll set the needle clamp and the needle clamping thumb screw, and we'll set them aside. Now that that's out of the way, we can go ahead and start removing this needle bar. So we can see the needle bar, it's moving up and down inside this bushing. What holds it in place is this needle bar connecting stud and clamping screw. So our goal next is to loosen the clamping screw, which we access from the back of the nose. That's going to take the pressure off the needle bar, and then we'll be able to kind of wiggle it free, and we're gonna slide it up through the top. So in order to loosen that, we're going to have to get behind the nose here. So we're looking at the back side of the nose. Do you see this hole right here? You can see the light through it. That's where we're going to see the screw that we need to loosen. And if you turn the hand wheel, you see how all of a sudden, and I'm not sure how in focus that is, so I apologize. But when we turn the hand wheel, what we will notice is that we will see the screw head pop up there. So let me see if I can get it into view for you. This machine is so dirty. I can see the head of the screw right down inside this hole. I have a feeling you can't. But if you check inside your machine down in this hole, you will see the head of the screw when you have the hand wheel turned so the needle bar is just at the right level. I'm going to access the screw head from this hole. That's what I'm going to do next. You might find one of these little mini ratcheting screwdrivers works really well in this tight space. So I'm just putting it in the screw and left to loosen. And I don't need to give this very many turns, just a few. Now I know this needle bar is probably pretty frozen, so I can try to see if I did loosen the screw enough by giving it a twist, but it may not twist in this case because it's kind of stuck. But I know that I loosened the screw enough, so I'm going to flip this machine back up. So this needle bar isn't going anywhere at this point. I know I've loosened the screw, it's just really stuck. I have put my penetrating oil in the different places where I know there's probably a lot of gunk that's sticking it all together. I'm going to use my non-marring pliers, which I have a link to these on Amazon. I'm just going to get a grip on the needle bar, and I'm going to see if I can get it to turn that way first. I don't know if you can see that, but look, I'm getting it to wiggle a little bit for me. So it's free, it's spinning. These pliers are amazing. They will not scratch up your needle bar, but just that gentle squeezing and twisting. I broke free all that old varnished oil, and not to mention the coil probably helped. But now I should be able to just slide my needle bar up and out. Now I want you to think of something. If you can't get it out past a certain point, it might just be because the end of the needle bar is so dirty. And there's so much dirt on the end of it that it won't fit up through the bushing. An easy solution is some Croil or penetrating oil on a paper towel, and just go ahead and give it a little wipe down before you try to shove it up through the bushing. That sometimes is all it takes to fix that problem. Unless your needle bar is bent, which hopefully it isn't, you should be able to clean it off a little bit while it's still on the machine, and then slide it up and all the way out. Look at that. We got the needle bar out. So here's our needle bar to our Singer 99, and we can go ahead and set this aside as well. And look right here. This is the flat spot that the clamping screw on the back of the needle bar connecting stud sits on that holds it in place. But let's set this aside. So now, as far as the needle bar clamping stud, even though there's a screw that we're accessing from the back side, that screw will fit through the hole in this linkage here that the stud is in. So at this point, you should be able to pull that all the way out the front. Do you see that? That is the needle bar connecting stud and clamping screw. And at this point, yes, I am taking them totally apart, and I'm going to set them aside for cleaning as well. Now we can get on with taking out the rest of this thread take-up system. Now, before we start removing screws from this thread take-up, I want to talk to you about something. On your sewing machine, I want you to look at this screw right here. It's going to have one of two different looks. It's going to look like this screw, and you can see mine is actually chowdered up a little. Someone, it was me, did that, and here's why. There is more than one type of screw that was used on the thread take-up in this spot right here. You have some that look like this. Do you see how big this screw is? This is a regular threaded screw, so it's left to loosen. This one, the big one. This one is a reverse threaded screw. It's right to loosen. So if you get in there with your screwdriver and start trying to turn it left, you're going to make a mess. There are other ways to detect a reverse threaded screw. Do you see how the slot runs totally across the screw on the head of this one? And on this screw, it doesn't. That's really your first clue. And I honestly have not come across a 99 that had the reverse threaded screw until this one right here. And then I checked the Spartan that I also have that I showed at the beginning of this series. It's reverse threaded as well. So in my case, when I say loosen this screw, I'm going to be going right to loosen. But in your case, if you have the bigger screw with the slot that goes from end to end, that is left to loosen. So this one will also be right to loosen, and that should be the same across all of the 99s. And like I said, just to make it clear, look at the head of the screw. That's going to tell you a lot about which way you need to turn it to get it out. So moving along, what we're going to do is we are going to be loosening this screw, right to loosen, this screw, in my case, right to loosen, but yours could be left. And then finally, after we take these two out, we'll be loosening a screw here in the counterbalance that holds the thread take-up crank in place. But that's back here, and we'll get to it last. So you need a screwdriver, and you need to make sure that your bit fits these screws because the slots are very different, and if you do not have a screwdriver that fits well, you are going to chowder up the screw head just like I did. But you can start with either one. You're just going to right to loosen on this first one, trying to keep it so the camera stays in focus for you. And this screw that comes out is going to be just a short little stubby screw. It has a name. It's the take-up lever cap screw. So we can set this aside. I'm going to go right to loosen on this screw, and I'll have to clean this screw head up a little bit because I did a little number on it, but yours might be left to loosen. And if you need to stand your machine up on its back end so you can get good downward pressure, do that. Sometimes that's a little bit easier. And we almost have this screw. Here we go. It's a type of hinge screw I've never seen before. It has a very tapered shoulder right here, which I'm guessing this linkage is ground out to fit that taper. So your screw may look like this, or it may look like this. Two very different screws. That's the joy of the fact that Singer made these 99s for so many years. We can see lots of different changes. So set your screw aside. What you should be able to do at this point is pull this linkage away It just took a little bit of wiggling. I really did oil this up quite a bit. So now we have the whole upper part of the thread take-up lever out. The thread take-up lever here and the upper linkage. I'm not sure the name of that, but look at how disgusting it is. When we clean this up and put fresh oil in it, it's going to work so much better, which is all that we really want. So set that aside. Now, the last piece we have to take out is the thread take-up crank. And you see this piece right here, there's a stud on it that goes through this linkage into this counterbalance. Now, if we check out the counterbalance, do you see this screw up here on top, opposite end of the crank? That's not the one we're going to look for. We are going to be looking for, you have to kind of watch that linkage. There's one up on top of this end closest to the crank. That's what we're going to look for. So go ahead and move it to the top, or even better, so the top end, the crank end, is pointing towards the back of the machine. Then you'll be almost ready to find the screw that you need to loosen, which we're going to access from the back. So the new finding here on this particular model, the screw hole is in a different spot. It's still touches the take-up crank, but it's not on the one end of the counterbalance like I thought it would be. It's down a little bit on the side. So just make sure you're not getting that bigger screw that I showed you. Make sure the screw that you're removing is the one that's up against the take-up crank. So let me see if I can let you get a little look here. It's in there. I promise. I'm going to lay this machine down with the backside up, and I'm going to get this screw out next. And this one is left to loosen for sure. So my Chapman's not going to fit in here, so I'm using one of my other screwdrivers. I wanted to show you, I'll try to put a link to this online. I use this to remagnetize my worn out magnetized screwdriver tips. And so I just put it in this little thing in here. The end is magnetized. Now I can undo this set screw and it will hopefully stay with the screwdriver and come out the top. So you might want to use your fingers and kind of hold that counterbalance still, and you're going to need downward pressure and left to loosen that screw. And yes, go ahead and take it all the way out. I think we're about there. There we go. See, it just stuck right on the screwdriver for me. So this is a set screw that holds the take-up crank in place inside the counterbalance. Set that aside. Now, before you do anything else, just do yourself a favor, and while you can see that hole, drop some penetrating oil right down into that hole. Just let it get in there. If anything's frozen, you'll be getting started on freeing it up, because we're going to flip the machine back over now and pull that take-up crank out. So now we should be able to get a good grip on this crank and pull it out. But of course, it's not going to come out willingly. So I have a pair of pliers, non-marring pliers, and I don't know how much you'll be able to see. I'm gripping that, and I'm just holding the hand wheel and trying to get that to kind of turn on its own. There we go. Now I can just pull the whole take-up crank out, and we have the take-up crank. There we go. And this linkage where the needle bar connecting stud goes into, and then this goes into the upper portion and into the counterbalance. All these need to be cleaned, and we're going to polish this up so it's nice and smooth and it goes into these holes and there's no friction when we're done. So we got it out, and that was a little bit of an adventure, I must admit. All right, let's look at what we took out. Turns really nice, doesn't it? Can't wait to get it fixed up. So the parts that we removed are the needle clamp, which is two parts. This part here that the needle goes up inside, up against the needle bar, and the little thumb screw that clamps the needle down. We took that off first. Then we loosened the clamping screw on the back of the needle bar connecting stud, which is here, and we took the needle bar out. So yay, the needle bar is out, and then we were able to pull these out as well. Then we removed a screw, a hinge screw, from the upper portion of the thread take-up system. And I want you to look. You're either going to have a screw that's big, like this, that was left to loosen, or you're going to have a smaller screw like this, with a longer tail still, like this one, that was right to loosen. You had one or the other probably. So whichever one you had, just remember, little one's going to be left to tighten when we put it back. So if you had one like this, you don't need to worry about mixing up screws, but if you had the smaller one, the take-up lever cap screw is also right to loosen. Don't worry about mixing them up because one has a longer tail. The one that we took out first up top has a longer tail. The cap screw has a much shorter one. So you should have taken both of those out. Then you removed the take-up lever, the linkage here. We removed this set screw to take out the take-up crank. That came out first. And then finally, when that set screw was out, we were able to remove the take-up crank and the linkage that it went into. And it went in like that up against the counterbalance. Here's where the needle bar connecting stud would have went. So those are all the parts you took off. So I hope you will leave me a note in the comments below what kind of screw you had up top here. Was it a reverse thread or just a standard threaded screw? When we come back, we are going to remove this whole tension assembly from the machine. That will kind of complete what we're doing in the nose, and then we can move along to the bottom side of the machine. I hope you enjoyed watching. I learned something. I'm always learning something new all the time, but I really look forward to the next video. I will see you again really soon. Bye.